Welcome all of you fellow arcanists out there to the Frith Guild podcast, where we explore an amazing world full of mystical creatures and their partners. Our hosts are Eric Smith and Scott Wareham, and they'll be your guides along this journey through plague and skyships. So grab your eldrin, strap on your swords, and get ready to defend the innocent from evil. Throughout this series, if you have not caught up to the chapters being discussed today, we urge you to hit the pause button, grab your copy of this wonderful book, and catch up. We'll be here when you get back. Restating what we said last week, every person who has caught the arcane plague has either gone insane or killed themselves to avoid that fate. There is no cure. But in a desperate search for a third option, Volke, Adelgis, and Fane, a plague victim, a creepy telepath, and the arcanist of a man-eater eldrin, fly cross-country on the sky ship Stun Chaser in the long-shot hope that Theasin then Rover, Adelgis' father, can save Volke from his fate. Their first stop is the city of Norra. But first, a piece of advice from the series. Step 4 on the Pillar of Ruma says preparation. Without it, we leave our fate to chance. So with that, let's get into chapters 11 through 15 of Plague Arcanist.
Hello and welcome back to the Frith Guild podcast. I'm your host Eric.
I'm the co-host Scott.
And today we'll be getting in chapters 11 through 15 of the Plague Arcanist, the fourth book in Shamey Stovall series. Before we get into it today, I do want to thank everybody for listening. And if we could ask everybody to like, share, subscribe, all of that on whatever platform you're listening to, whether it's on YouTube or on the podcast itself.
And with that, we'll jump into chapter 11, which is the khapera mystery. So they arrive to a separate dock just for the airships, so they're coming into New Norra. As they're going out, Volke realizes that he is covered in the woodcotton, which is extremely warm in the middle of the desert, and he is essentially wearing extra layers while walking around in the extreme heat. They do some rumor milling around and realize that the Marshal of the Southern Seas is really trying to make it difficult for anything to happen within the city.
So they're actually denying these pirates and everybody else to go any further south than New Norra. So you can definitely see that things are kind of getting bottlenecked there. And basically everybody's at a standstill of what they can do and where they can go.
Vedika is extremely worried about the khapera, which are these giant scarabs with powerful regenerative magic. Nobody has bonded with them in over 2 decades. They're kind of one of the things that New Norra is famous for. And there used to be a bonding ceremony every 2 years with them, but the ceremony isn't being held anymore. You know, the khapera have kind of gone missing. As they wander around the city, Volke does notice that the roofs of the city are actually color-coded.
I have to admit, this is a pretty awesome idea that they came up with to navigate throughout the city, even as a tourist. It's almost as cool as having the city laid out in Elios.
Yeah, it's another ingenious way to be able to navigate around, kind of know what district you're in, know where, you know, what building's a shop, what building's residential. As they're going around, Volke does notice that it is almost a custom not to hide the forehead. So if somebody does have an Arcanist mark, they aren't able to hide it, as kind of we saw in some of the earlier cities as well. People would hide their foreheads and try not to reveal that they had some extra power. It seems to not be customary in New Norra, at least. Karna and Vedika go on their own to look for mystic keepers.
With how large this place is, I can only imagine how daunting this task is going to be to find these in the city, decent in the city. I know Adelgis gives me 3 thoughts and everything and can deduce where he could probably be, but it's still pretty daunting trying to find one person in a large city.
Yeah, it's tough, and you think he almost seems famous in some circles. So it seems like Adelgis might know like where to go kind of poke around to hear. In the scholar library, university area, wondering if he can find him. But yeah, it's going to be tough to find a sole person in a massive city.
Theasin is famous, and I think he's famous to some people by name, but if they ever run into him or meet him, you think he's famous for a different reason.
Yes, I don't know, not a good fame in all cases. So Bayou is frantic going around really wants to document everything. She feels that it's her job. She's got her giant book with her. She wants to take her notes and draw the pictures. And Delvin is really giving her a hard time. He doesn't want to have to worry about her as they're going into the city. And she's turning on as much cuteness as she can muster.
Bayou waves those puppy dog eyes at Devlin, and who can blame him? I don't think anybody can resist caving into Bayou trying to come along with them. And realistically, I think Devlin is just a giant teddy bear at heart.
Absolutely, especially when it comes to her. He's got a soft spot for her. Fane and Adelgis are going to go, like we mentioned, kind of look around for Theasin, as difficult as a task that may be. And Jose and Volke are going to go shopping. So, like we mentioned, Norra doesn't have restrictions on what can be bought and sold. So if you go to the right market, pretty much anything's for sale. And as they're out on their shopping spree, Volke does notice that the city starts ringing bells to pretty much warn that sunrise or sunset is coming. And Jose mentions that this is because of such extreme temperature differences. It's a warning to citizens either to get inside or just to know that the weather's going to be changing drastically over the next hour or so. Jose also takes them to a lot of the back alley shops, essentially says, hey, if you go to the main shopping area, that's the tourist destination. But all the good stuff is in the back alley. So they walk along towards some of these lesser known shops, and Volke gets to talking with him about his love life of all things.
I like that Jose is asking, hey, is there a girl or maybe a boy that you're smitten with? I think that's pretty progressive that Jose would even actually mention that. Basically, it doesn't have to be just a girl. I appreciate that.
I do. It's extremely inclusive.
I mean, I would think, though, that with Karna and the way that she talks about Volke, I imagine he probably wouldn't need to worry about one way or the other, but
he's not jumping to conclusions, but yeah, the evidence would suggest that it's more a girl than a boy. And we also, as the chapter's wrapping up, we do learn that they are not the only ones who think that the khapera can cure the plague. The marshal also thinks that that's a potential answer to the plague. So kind of a few different ideas floating around of where the cure can come from, and the khapera seems to be one that's on the top of a lot of people's list.
They're said to have restorative powers, I believe, right?
Correct. Some restorative, regenerative magic.
So in chapter 12, Reaper Arcanist, Jose is actually surprised to find out that Volke is a more well-rounded arcanist other than just Volke Smash. He's a more studious person, and Jose states that he's more interested in worthwhile fields such as magical mysteries or artifact creations rather than tales of old. And I feel like that just kind of like crushes Volke a little bit because that's what Volke is really interested in.
Yeah, and it's crazy because he's living out that adventurous life as Jose saying, yeah, it's not my favorite field.
I feel like Volke could have just been like, name drop, I met Gregory Ruma just for the sake of it.
I defeated Gregory Ruma.
Just to see how he'd react.
Yeah, he should have. He had the opportunity. He played it cool, though.
So we find out that khaperas live in what's called the underground, and that this is essentially where the grotto labyrinth is. And in order to actually bond with a khapera, their trial of worth is that you must navigate this labyrinth. And
they also mention Jose's suspicious in general of Theasin. He mentions he does think he's a better artificer than Theasin is. And he also thinks, Theasin being the low-level guy that he is, that he might have done something or been behind the khapera's disappearance. So Jose is very suspicious all around of the situation.
I mean, Jose doesn't need to have a forged heat iron and metal. Like, I couldn't imagine just like, here's a piece of metal, here we go. That alone is pretty awesome.
It is. It's extremely helpful for his line of work.
So Volke going into hero mode here is just like, I'm going to just walk up in this place and go find those lost khaperas. And they're standing outside one of the entrances to the grotto labyrinths. We find out there are several guards standing around the entrances of the grotto labyrinth to ensure that people just don't walk into it like Volk just tried to do. And as Jose's talking to him about this, he's basically telling him, hey, you can't do that. This is why. There are guards there for reasons, and this is why you can't. This dude comes running out of the nowhere, screaming. He's covered in blood. And for some reason, Volk has this like plague tingling sensation. Like instead of spidey senses, it's plague senses. He can tell the guy running is infected by the plague and he's being chased by a Reaper Arcanist. Now, this Reaper is merged with the Arcanist, so we don't see the Reaper itself, the Arcanist itself. And as the Reaper chases down the guy, he uses his nightmare magic, or the terror magic, I guess. And this is one of those moments that I don't know if it's just laziness or just not trained well enough, but the Reaper uses his terrors on everybody. And Volk is just, we know that Volk is immune, but we can also know that it can be manipulated so that it only affects the person they want it to. Like he can choose who's going to be affected by this, but it just gets everybody with it. The Reaper kills the Plague Arcanist and gets another chain link on, and the name goes onto the link, and they separate, and we find out that it's Jevil from the Huntsman Guild. And I guess we find out that it's just laziness, and that he decided to hit everybody with the tears and not just the guy that was running down and was hunting down, because Jevil is a Master Reaper Arcanist. Master Reaper Arcanist. And for seeing that, for those that weren't or aren't watching on YouTube, I very, very sarcastically air quoted Master Reaper Arcanist because Jevil is, I think, self-proclaimed in all rights and should probably not have a title of such.
He does seem that way based on the interactions with Zelfrey. He seems to live on lore and, the number of links in his chain, actually quite literally in this manner, more than, true skill or anything else. That does bring us into chapter 13, joining the Frith Guild. So Vedika is also looking for the khapera, we find out, but she's probably not going to help Volk. Her and Volk aren't on the best of terms at this time, so Volk is probably on his own.
Wonder why.
Volk does shadow step with Jose, but it ends up really hurting him.
I think Volk's trying to do the same subtle little things to kind of like impress his dad, and I think it's definitely working for Volk. Because of the, hey, look, I'm helping you out, but at the same time, I want you to see that I can handle my own.
Yes, all my cool magic skills. We also come to find out that the Huntsman Guild and Jevil are being paid to hunt down the plague. So Plague Arcanist, Plague Eldrin.
I just want to know where the two other puppy Arcanists are. Or the Danglong or the Earl King. Like, where are they? Where's everybody at?
This mission's too hard for them, so they got to stay home. So as they're regrouping at the ship, Adele just didn't really have much luck finding his father, but he is going to keep looking. And at this point, we do enter another dream sequence with Volk. So in this case, it's actually going back to Zelfrey's childhood, and it's Zelfrey going to sign up for the Frith Guild. So Linus had attempted, they had the flyers for the application for the guilds, and Linus had attempted, but essentially there was a math test and he couldn't pass it, so he was denied access. And Zelfrey himself is extremely confident that he's going to be able to pass this test. And when he goes up to the guild, we notice that it's actually Gregory Ruma giving out the test. And when he asks Zelfrey whether he can read, Zelfrey's very arrogant. He makes sly comments of essentially, I can pass the test, like just skip to your hardest question. He passes the test, flying colors, math questions I probably wouldn't have been able to answer. And he did it without a pen and paper and calculator. So extreme props to him. And he was even offered an officer position. So he doesn't really want to take this position because Linus isn't also in the guild. But Linus ends up convincing him that it's an amazing position. Linus can go join another group, find another way through the lightning straits, and essentially they'll meet up later down the road.
So Linus pretty much forces Everett to go with the Frith Guild, and Everett does make a good solid plan. He's hey, as long as we get through the lightning straits, there aren't very many port towns after that. So once we get there, or once we get through, we can kind of move back and reconvene. And I can only imagine Linus standing there basically watching his friend go with the Frith Guild. And I know Linus probably wanted to go with him, at least to the Frith Guild. And as much as Linus wants to say not, but he does. I imagine the Mystic Seekers were probably not the worst of places to go.
Actually, given that the captain of the Mystic Seekers is Redbeard, who we all know becomes the dread pirate Redbeard, in this case, the Mystic Seekers are the worst place to go.
But to go with his friend, and how much he really had to have cared for Everett to be like, no, you're not coming with me. You're going to be in the better guild and take that officer position.
Yeah, he knows the offer is just too good to pass up. An officer in training, that's easy access to get to the top, to eventually, be a master, be a captain, be high up in the guild.
Get himself out of whatever swallow and swallower that he used to live in, and make something of himself.
Yeah, this is his golden ticket. And we end up with Volke waking up from the dream sequence, and he turns to Adelgis and he asks if Linus dies, and Adelgis tells him very honestly that no, he lives, he's alive.
Or like the next 5 chapters to figure this out. Like, you have to read it in order.
I thought about that too, and then I thought, well, Adelgis is just kind of throwing these memories in whatever order he wants. So who knows? We could be going back and forth and skipping decades, but it's a very interesting question. So.
Right.
He is all for the spoilers.
So note to self, don't let Adelgis read a book before you. With chapter 14, Theasin Venrover, rumors are starting to circulate about what happened in Thronehold. The only real consistent facts that are correct is that the queen is dead, and Rashawn is primed to take her position in Thronehold itself, not one of the other rulers from a smaller area. Nobody actually mentions that the runestones are missing, or I guess probably nobody really even knows that the runestones were even existed, probably, other than decoration. And I'm not wholly surprised that nobody's talking about it. I know Volke is, and he's kind of like, wait, why is this not of concern? And it is. It's a very concerning thing. But again, most people don't know about them to begin with, let alone that they were for the god creatures and all that. So I can understand why Volke's concerned. But again, I don't see why most people would know about it.
No, they were a decoration in the throne room for a long time, so it's just another piece of art to the majority of people.
But especially because they had fake ones up, so it's not like people would really have known. So they happen in front of the Norra library because no city trip would be complete without visiting the library, Hermione.
And Scar level just maxed out stats here to find this fact interesting.
And Moonbeam starts to explain that Elios uses wood pulp for paper, because then he's like, well, in New Norra, they use ibex for their paper pulp, and ibex is fiber from goat's fur. And I could just see Fane looking over at him and being like, who cares? Like, why do you know this? Not even how, why?
Yes, this has no impact on our adventure.
So Volke is asking Adelgis if he likes his nickname, and he actually does. And he says that he's fairly happy with it, and Adelgis says that he likes it because it's confusing. And I have to 100% agree with it.
I do as well, especially because Felicity goes invisible most of the time, so there's no real source of light or anything, so it just feels like it comes from nowhere.
But in Fane, I mean, it doesn't sound like super scary, but okay, that's an average, I guess, name. So Fane is becoming more confident with himself. He's getting less worried about being just abandoned at the next port, as Volt is teaching him more and more and spends more time with him, giving him lessons, treating him like a person, I guess, just genuinely being interested in him.
There's an actual, like more of a bond than just, I happen to save your life, you should feel indebted to me. But truly, we care about you. We want you to do well. We're concerned about your well-being. The first semblance of family that Fane has had in a long time.
Right. This is an abusive that actually cares about him. With Moonbeam having, or Adele just having, I'm going to just call him Moonbeam for the rest of this time because I just love his name.
It's a great nickname.
It's kind of that extra nail in the coffin to make Fane feel more happy, more comfortable. So they go in the library and Moonbeam talks to the librarians, trying to figure out some information, see what they can think, what they thinking to see if they can find Theasin. And Luther starts sniffing around to see if you can find any interesting books or anything like that Theasin wrote. Luther ends up finding a book on the abyssal creatures. So kudos to you, Luther, for being such a good librarian. So Volke does read over the entry for the abyssal leech, which is in this book and essentially explains that abyssal leeches can unweave magical items. And I don't know about you, but unweave doesn't really sound like a very good word to use.
No, it seems dangerous. It seems like something's fallen apart and more breaking than, restoring to its original state.
Right. Like, do you want me to cure you or explode you?
Yes, your arm's a little injured. We'll just unweave it from your body.
It's gone. It's no longer. You want me to take your mind off the pain? So Theasin is probably omitting a lot of information in his book that he's done this so that he can keep on to certain information so that he has that for himself. Because knowledge is power. And the more information that Theasin has on himself that nobody else knows, the better. And we also find out that Theasin has already left and no one knows where to. Dale just only knows all of this because he could read the minds of the librarians. I don't remember who brought up the idea of let's just go sneak into his grand laboratory and get it from there. But somebody gets onto that thought process and they're like, well, how? And they're all sitting there thinking about it. And they don't want to just sneak in. Like, this is probably not a place to just sneak into. However, I imagine Volke has done worse, but it is what it is. It looks like, well, wait a minute. We could just ask Karna to turn into Theasin and we'd be good.
Which is a genius and perfect use of doppelganger magic.
So Volke's like, let's do this right now. And Moonbeam's like, wait a minute. We need time out here. We need to at least give a 2-day notice so that way it looks like Theasin's actually on his way back. Because we just showed up right now, nobody would believe us.
Theasin is so important that he gives everybody a 2-day notice so they can prepare themselves for when he arrives.
I guess I know what day I'm calling off work.
That's how it feels. Yeah, it's 2 days to prepare yourself for what's incoming. That brings us to chapter 15, which is Adelgis's father. So the group is going to rejoin. They head to a cantina, and when they go inside, Karna is dancing for coin.
A good thing that Volke doesn't have a guild pen anymore.
Right? Any trinkets, anything of value he can throw at her.
Or get stolen off of him.
Yes. So Volke goes to talk to her and asks her for help to break into the lab, and she says that she wants payment. Volke replies that, well, I'm pretty broke, so she gives him a bunch of coins.
Thanks, Mom.
She does say, though, that she wasn't actually looking for coin. He can keep the coin, but what she really wants is for him to sleep in her quarters, but does let him know, like, hey, nothing's going to happen.
She did say that when they did this, that she will lend him any and all of my magic whenever you want. And I will let you guys use your imaginations for that one.
Yes. So we... We can only imagine where Volke would take that. So we do see Volke doing some more training with Fane. So he's having Fane create an ice fog. Bayou's actually rooting for them, cheering them on.
Volk accidentally calls her Ilya, and that was a slip of the tongue, but I can see it.
I can too. The eye patch is so distinctive, and there's such a connection with Ilya that I'm sure he misses her greatly. That it's the first thing that comes to mind when he sees the eye patch. We also learn that Vedika already has a very detailed map of the labyrinth. Volke goes to talk to her and asks if she has time. She says no. He kind of pushes his way into the conversation anyway. And we learn that Vedika used to have the plague, and she ended up having to kill her Eldrin, which was a Thunderbird, and hates that Volke hasn't done this already and is dragging out the process.
This is one of those moments that you know that Adulgis could have been like, hey, this is what happened. This is why she doesn't particularly care for you. And Volke has to pry some information out of Adulgis. And there are times where Adulgis is just like, here you go. And here's the information. And then there are times where he's just like, I could have mentioned it, I guess. I just want to say go Shammy for keeping his character consistent and fitting him so well with it, with how obviously nonchalant he is, but he's emotionally detached. So I really do love the character that's been built for him.
Yeah, there is a lot of morality between, sharing people's personal, intimate thoughts, all of Zelfri's memories, which he has, and saying, hey, I can't share everything related to these because Zelfri doesn't want me to. So he is very respectful of the fact that he has access to information that people don't really want others to know. We end the chapter with Karna strolling into the room, dressed to the nines as Theasin.
Of all of her disguises, Theasin is the one that fools both of them the best. What?
And the one where he knows Theasin isn't actually there. The other was the captain, people that could actually be there. And those don't fool him. But Theasin, she's got his mannerisms down, I guess.
I guess Moonbeam did say he gave her dreams of Theasin, so she's able to get his mannerisms in her dreams better. But she literally works with Devlin.
It's surprising. It's very surprising. That does bring us to the bestiary. So the first one we're going to go through is the khapera. So they are described as being fist-sized scarabs with iridescent exoskeletons, black eyes, and being extremely, extremely intelligent. From mythology, the scarab that faced God is going back to an Egyptian religion and represents the rising or the morning sun, and also said to represent the creation and renewal of life, so goes well in hand with the regenerative, restorative magic that they have. Their trial of worth, like we mentioned, is to go through the grotto or the underground labyrinth and complete a series of dangerous puzzles. They are tier 3, and they have a really, really unique reproduction. So it is Fable. So there's 112 khapera that were born, and whenever a khapera dies, it doesn't truly die. The sands of the body go back to the desert and the creature reforms as a child. So there's a limit to the total number of khapera that are available to bond with at any kind of given time. They don't retain their memories or anything, but it's the same cycle of these 112 khapera living and dying. They are able to evoke a white hot light, and their manipulation is actually through time. So they're able to manipulate and reverse time, augmentation with time as well, changing kind of the passage of time and how quickly that goes. For passive abilities, they evoke the white hot light. They are able to see through blinding lights and able to see, damage that's been done to the soul. And their aura is the ancient eyesight, which creates a fog in the nearby area. And everybody in that area plays out memory scenes related to that location. So things that would have occurred there years and years ago are playing out in everyone's head. And their true form, they become pure gold and they glisten regardless of the lighting. Their eyes do become diamonds, and they give the ability to travel back in time twice in total with the diamonds of their eyes.
Shoot.
Yeah, that's some cool magic right there.
All right, it's hard to follow up with this one, but our second creature in the bestiary today is going to be the Thunderbird. These are giant birds of the sky with affinity for lightning. In mythology, the legend comes from particular North American indigenous peoples, history, and culture. It's also considered a supernatural being of power and strength, and it is Zapdos. We don't know the trial of worth for it, and we do know, though, that it is a tier 3 Pokemon. Unfortunately, we don't really know anything else about the creature itself, not its reproduction, evocation, manipulation, augmentation, or passive abilities.
Probably evokes some sort of lightning as well.
I would guess that our Arcanist is probably immune to lightning effects for passive abilities. So the aura is the Thunderbird's Thunderclap aura, which causes a thunderstorm whose lightning strikes out of all nearby metal, incapacitating or killing all those in contact. We also don't know what its true form looks like, so again, we're kind of not sure, but hopefully maybe we'll see something more information depending on when the bestiary is released. Hopefully soon after listening to this, but again, we're waiting on the date, so we'll see. Hopefully there'll be some more information on it in there. And with that, we want to thank everybody for listening. And we want to remind everybody that we do post new episodes every Wednesday morning around 11 Eastern, 10 Central, and 8 Pacific Standard Time. We want to thank our editor, Dan Mackison, for all the amazing work that he does for us, including editing and actually putting up pictures and the links to everything in the description section for us. We just want to say thank you so much for listening. The link to the Frith Chronicles Wiki is in the description, along with the Capital Station Discord, and we look forward to seeing you guys next week.